And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to Preneurcast.
Yeah, business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Tom Gosher.
how well did that go down?
Talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at preneurmarketing.com.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this edition of Preneurcast with me, Dom Goucher, and mostly him, Pete Williams. But you're not very well today, are you, Pete?
No, I've had a bit of a cough for the last couple of days, and it's been pretty bad. So hopefully we'll get through today without any major coughing fits down the line.
So, see, folks, for those of you who didn't think he was human, he is. Folks, in this show, honestly, I know I say this every time. I know I do, but yet another awesome interview. And this one really did catch me completely out of left field. This show is a conversation, Pete, that you had with a guy called Phil Barham. Now, I had really had no hope for this one. Go on, give us some background.
So definitely, if you're in Australia, you'd know the impact Phil has had around the country. About 2 or 3 years ago, there was this huge wave of stickers that every second car had on them. It was like My Family stickers. And what they were little stick figure caricatures of, dad, mum, the kids, the dog, and kind of represented the family and their hobbies in these stick figures. And they were literally everywhere. It was amazing. So I actually tracked down Phil, who was behind this phenomenon, and had a chat to him about sort of how did he reach this tipping point? How did he build this business up? And what have they done now? Because they're now going global. They're in Canada and America and throughout Europe. And it's a really interesting story about how he actually, manufactured the demand and what he actually did to build this and the path to market. It's a very interesting conversation. We cover a lot, and he's very, very open about a lot of stuff that he did to make this business a success.
Yeah, let's just drop some figures here. He has sold over 8 million stickers in 23 countries. Okay, there's got to be something for everybody in this conversation. Seriously, you mentioned tipping point. He talks about these situation. He literally manufactured viral demand. So these are all the magic words that you always hear, that people always say, oh, you must have viral demand, and you've got to be a scalability and all these things. This guy has gone through it all. So do not underestimate the fact that, okay, yes, it's a bunch of stickers. They're on the back of cars. But seriously, there is some fantastic information in here. And he's so open and honest. I love some of the stories in here. So check this out. This is Phil Barham talking about is it the My Family stickers?
That's it.
Phil, thank you so much for your time, buddy.
You're welcome.
Mate, I'm absolutely delighted to have you here because the whole sticker phenomenon has been huge, and I've been very intrigued about how it all started and who was behind it. And it was only recently that I actually stumbled across an article online about you guys, and I was surprised that it was an Australian behind it and his partner. And mate, very excited to have you here.
Fantastic, thank you. Grateful to be here too. What actually happened, and I've been asked the question a number of times, and had somebody even said to me 5 or 6 years ago, actually probably 6 years ago, that I would be responsible for a stick figure phenomenon that went worldwide, I would have just laughed at them. I never expected it would go in the direction that it went.
Well, you're a chiropractor by trade, aren't you?
Yeah.
Is that right?
I've been a chiropractor for 25 years, and so I'd never had any retail experience. Even though I'd always been very entrepreneurial in background, it wasn't until I got together with Monica, my wife, who we have a blended family. She has a couple of 14-year-old daughters, and I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old son. And Monica's background is graphic design, and she owned a print broking business. So neither of us had ever really done retail. So for us to move into this arena was a massive learning curve.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's get into that. How did it start? Now, my understanding is you were in California for a chiropractic conference?
Yeah, I was over in California back in about 2001, 2002. And so my eldest was only about 2 or 3 years old. So very much my focus was very family orientated.
Yep.
And I was, of course, over there on my own, and I was looking for, okay, what do I take back as a present?
Yep.
And I was sitting gridlocked in traffic, one of those stereotypical scenes that you see with 8 lanes of traffic going nowhere.
Yep.
And there was a sticker on the back of a car in front of me, and it wasn't a stick figure sticker. It was just, but the concept was that it was kind of, it showed like a baby, and I looked at it and went, wow, that'd be really cool. I'd love to get something like that designated that I'd been over here in the States or whatever. And so it was similar to, it still kind of talked about, you know how you have the stickers on the back of the car that tell you what state you're in or whatever, or wherever you've been. But it was representing like a whole family orientation. And so I kind of went, that's interesting. Came back to Australia, and there was nothing available. And the only way that we could purchase something was to go online. And at that time, back in 2002, the last thing I wanted to do was order stickers from the States and then have them sent to Australia.
Yeah.
So I just shelved the idea. Okay. And it wasn't until about 4 or 5 years later when I still realized that there was nothing had really turned up in the marketplace, that Monica and I, when we got together, we started bantering around. We were looking for something that we could do together that would hopefully be an income-producing stream, but would utilize her talents as a graphic artist, and I had the ability to fund it.
Yep.
So that's how it came about. Monica is the designer. Both of us, and we used to have a saying that went that it was designed in Burleigh Heads, which is where we live. We had all of our work was done because of her contacts, printing wise, were done on the Gold Coast.
Yep.
And it was a really very home-based business to start with.
Awesome. Was it the first kind of business venture you guys tried to do together and just sort of blew up?
The first one. It was the first one that we had done together. I would consider myself, and I've had people talk about me as a serial entrepreneur and these are clients that I've had for years who will just say, Phil, anything you seem to touch seems to work. But the big thing is anything I was willing to work at seemed to work.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I point out to people all the time, is that there is no magic formula as such. It's when opportunity meets the ability, like a skill set, you're able to take advantage of it. And that's really what happened for us in this circumstance. And it wasn't until we were probably 12 months into it that we went, okay, we need to put together a really we need to put a real structure in place and a plan for moving forward.
Because when you started this, was it just about sort of, selling to the local area and then making enough money for a good family holiday every year? Was that kind of about the limit of the goal or not?
We were looking at maybe this would help us get a deposit for a house.
Yeah.
But I mean, our initial investment was $12,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I had already worked out before we spent the money how many retailers and that we needed in order to take it on. And the beauty of Monica's skill set was that everything that she produced looked like we were already in the retail market.
Mm.
So all of the graphics, all of the posters, everything basically made it look like we already had stock and that we were already out in the marketplace. So we started off on the Gold Coast, which is amazing as a hub for somewhere to start for, especially for what we were doing. It was phenomenal. We started doing local markets,
mm-hmm.
And then we did school fairs. So in that season when we launched, I think we did 17 school fetes in a 14-week period.
Wow. Because I always thought that was the way that it started, because it was very much clearly, the family-orientated kind of product. There's no doubt about that. And It was very much sort of like, it looked like image-based. There was a lot of like the young families, like primary school kids, that kind of age parents buying it. And I always thought, was it a school-based fundraiser type campaign that started it? Or was it just simply going to fetes and...
Yeah, what actually happened, and there was a couple of strategies that we put in place. We wanted to go retail straight away. Our theory was, we worked out really quickly that our target market was 5 to 10 year olds.
Mm-hmm.
And what was brilliant from a viral marketing point of view was we had 5 to 10 year olds at that stage. So we put stickers on our car and we gifted stickers to a lot of my patient base.
Yep.
I had a very big family practice. So we actually, when we set up the website originally, before we went live, we probably gifted about 250 sets of stickers out to patients and friends and families at the school that we were at. And so what happened is, of course, you've got half a dozen to a dozen cars turning up at school pickup and at drop-off with our stickers on the back of the car. And so the kids would see them and they would bug the parents about, we want these stickers.
Yeah.
And that's how we grew from there. So when we strategically went to schools and we did look at the fundraising, as we moved into other countries, we definitely looked at schools as a fundraiser. Here on the Gold Coast, we grew so quickly that there was no need.
Yeah.
We'd do a fete at a school. We'd sell $1,000 worth of stickers, which meant that we probably ended up on 40 to 50 cars. And then that just would virally spread because people would be seeing these cars at school.
Yeah, the power of a nagging 6-year-old.
It's amazing. And we actually, when we were doing our market research really early in the piece, the only thing that was in the marketplace before us was only being sold on the internet. And what's really interesting is having what we made a decision to do is 5 to 10-year-olds really don't go online to buy stuff.
Not at all.
So we actually made sure that the stores that we targeted were stores that 5 to 10-year-olds would either be going past all of the time or would have traffic flow. And so our biggest sellers at one stage in Australia were news agencies, and one of the chains that took us on was Nextra, and strategically positioned in shopping centres near a Woolworths.
Yeah.
So the kids are walking past every time, and we'd have a banner out the front, and everything was at the right height for a 5 to 10-year-old. So all of the 5-year-old stickers were at eye height for a 5-year-old. And so it was just, we did do quite a lot of planning around it, but we definitely decided that retail, having a physical presence, was what was going to create the sale.
And I think that's really, really cool, particularly in this day and age, because everyone wants to start a business, but everyone thinks the best place to do it is online. And, so many, reasons why that is definitely a good path to market. But depending on your niche and who you're going after, there is still a lot of wealth to be made in retail. And you're clearly evident of that.
Well, what we found out as well is we were looking, we had an online presence. But one of the things that we did is we had some good friends who were retailers, and we were, because we had no knowledge at all, we just asked, and this is one of the things I say to anyone who's looking at getting started is ask questions, and just continuously ask questions until you find out the answers from people who are in the niche that you're looking at targeting. And most of them are very happy to help. One of the things that we did is we never put any of our web information on any of our promotional material, because we wanted the retailers to not feel like they were advertising for us, but they were advertising for their own store. What was interesting is we worked out as we got busier that with internet orders, the average order that any family would order was 7 stickers. So the average family would spend $27.50. And even though our profit on an internet order was about 87%, so we had a gross profit rate of about 87% on our internet orders, we could only pick and pack, even hiring somebody who, as they got better at it, they could pick and pack 14 orders in an hour.
Okay.
Whereas we could have a retail store place an order for 1,000 stickers, and we could pick and pack that in 10 minutes.
Yep, because they're doing volume, obviously.
And so the volume, we dropped our gross profit by making sure that the margins were there for the retailers. But and that was bizarre, because we were actually a manufacturer, we had an e-commerce or an online presence. We were wholesaling. And we were covering all of them, and we were even distributing to other countries. And that's when it went crazy.
Yeah.
When we started to look at because we had, being on the Gold Coast, we'd have people who would come to the Gold Coast on holidays. They'd see the stickers on the backs of cars, and our first 3 international agents had all come to the Gold Coast on holidays, seen the stickers, thought it was a great concept, got in touch with us. And then we negotiated distribution rights in their countries.
Nice, very cool. Well, I definitely want to get into that, but what do you think from a retail perspective was the tipping point? Like, at what point did it really explode? Because obviously, being in your local market, doing the school fetes and the markets definitely is going to sell a lot. But at what time and when did you sit down at night with Monica and go, this is getting not out of control, but this is huge. Like, I'm based in Melbourne, and like they're all over the cards here in Melbourne. There was clearly a tipping point where it just exploded. What was that? What caused that?
Okay, well, the hilarious thing is Melbourne took 18 months after we had exploded on the Gold Coast for it to hit Melbourne. And so I'd done a lot of reading of Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point. And what was interesting was even in our first month, we had targeted retail stores straight away. So even though what we were doing with the school fetes was getting stickers on cars, the whole purpose of that was just to create a interest and a flow to our retailers. So what would happen is we'd have somebody place an order online because we would have sold it at a school fete, and then we'd actually say to them, by the way, we'd send this out with the order, by the way, we now have a retailer. We'd look at where they were living. We now have a retailer in Maroochydore, and it's this store. So we would let them know, and we'd even say to them, people are going to come up and ask you where you got the stickers from, and you're going to have, like, you're going to get inundated by people asking you. At least now you have somewhere you can send them in your local area.
Nice.
And but what we also did, which was interesting, is we ended up with four autobahns on the Gold Coast very early within our first month of opening. So we actually had 7 retailers by the end of our first month and 30 retailers by the end of our second month.
Explosive growth.
What actually happened is we went and talked to the first retailer, the first automotive brands. We pitched the concept at him. He said, yes, that's great. And we went, and he said, absolutely interested. And so our next question was, well, do you think that the other stores would be interested in carrying it? And his comment was yes. And I said, would you be okay with doing an introduction for us? And that worked really, really well. So we had no concept that, of course, that some retailers feel like they're in a competitive market. The beauty of automotive brands is that all 4 of them were very evenly spaced across the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
What we then did is we looked at what stores would sell well for us. Even though automotive made sense because it was in the back of cars, our best selling stores were actually news agencies and gift stores. Because of that
no 5-year-olds walking into Autobarn.
You got it. And even the mum, who was the main purchaser. Okay, like we sold 4 to 7 times more stickers through a Nextra store or a gift store than we ever did in an automotive brand store. But what was interesting is that, because a mum normally wasn't the person who would go into an automotive brand store either. Automotive Brands was the first chain to take us on Australia-wide, but what I did was we actually had 17 of their stores before we even became a blip on their national sales agents' kind of radar.
Yep.
And the reason for that was every single one of those stores I physically approached myself. We'd start getting pockets of sales from internet sales in a particular area. I would work out where the closest Automotive Brands was. I would ring them, I would pitch to them, I would tell them who else was selling and what the stats were like, and that's how we grew. And the interesting thing with the retail, like the Nextra stores, so in our first month, we had 4 automotive brands, we had 2 gift stores that were owned by a friend, a surf store, and the other store was a Nextra news agency. And I knew this gentleman, and he was very happy to take it on as a trial and see, and it went nuts. And we would send him lots of people when they were kind of inquiring. But what was interesting is that we went to the Sunshine Coast for a holiday, and we would walk into shopping centres and try and work out which shop we wanted to sell through. So one of the other things that we did really early in the piece is, rather than sell to just any retailer, we would pick one retailer per shopping centre. And the reason that we did that is because even what the feedback that we'd had from the retailers is that when a new product came out, if it flooded the market too quickly and was available to everyone, they didn't feel like they were less inclined to take the product on because they knew everyone was going to get it.
Yeah.
So what was interesting is with an extra store up on the Gold Coast, I walked in one day. We were on holidays. I walked in one day and said, "Hey, listen, I'm looking for to buy some of my family stickers." Okay, and the person who owns the store, I've told her this story since. So I told a little fib, and I said, "I'm looking to buy my family stickers. Have you seen them?" And because I'd asked for the owner, and they said, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Oh, these little stickers on the back of the car. I saw them on the Gold Coast. There's actually one of your news agencies on the Gold Coast is selling them." And that's all I said. And they said, "No, we don't know anything about what you're talking about." I said, "No, okay, I'll get in touch with them." 2 days later, I had Monica go into the store.
Nice.
And she said, "Hey, I'm looking for the stickers." And so it was already in their reticular activating system.
Yep.
Then when we came back from holidays, I rang the store and said, "Hey, listen, I'm Phil Barham. I've had some people, we've got some people, we sell these stickers. We've had some people up in your area asking for them, getting in touch with us. We have one of your stores down here who sells them. They're quite happy to have a chat to you. Would you be open to having a look?"
Nice.
That was their, and she actually said to me, for the next 14 months, it was their highest grossing product that they had. And she laughed when she heard that story that I told her later on that's what we'd done.
The power of manufacturing demand. I love it.
And so we created that in a lot of cases. But what then happened is, of course, is we'd have 2 or 3 extra stores. So when we wanted to move to a shopping center, we'd look for the stores that we were already in as a chain. And the beautiful thing about going to them versus going to the big chains, we decided not to approach the really big chains, is because we knew that our margins would get absolutely sliced in half in order for us to negotiate a deal with them.
Mm. So I want to back up. There's some amazing stuff, and I've written some notes. I want to ask you about a few things there, Phil. So you were saying that when you had an online order, you would obviously spend the time and work out where they were and tell that person that there's a local store for generating the referrals, so helping your retailers, really supporting your retail base to generate clientele for them. Were you simply was it in the package you were handwriting a note saying, "Thanks for your order, here's a local store," or was it an email you sent out? What was the actual tactical stuff you were doing to really do that?
Yep. Every single order, we had a "thank you for buying my family stickers" little letter that went with it. And it was only about a paragraph long, and it was pretty scripted. We were able to insert their first name and things like that. Yep. What we also did early in the piece, if we didn't have a retail store in the area, we'd actually send them a a web address sticker and say, "Hey, listen, you're going to get asked a lot. Here is a web address sticker. You can just stick it if you're happy to stick it on. Go for it." But as soon as we got half a dozen orders from a particular area, we would target that area and find a retailer that we could move to. So we were very conscious of, even though our gross profit per sale was greater, there was no way that we could compete with the volume.
Absolutely.
Because of the way the product was. And because there was 123 designs, picking and packing 14 orders in an hour they actually had to physically, I was basically retired from being allowed to pick and pack orders within about the first 3 months. But we were a home-based business to start with. Yep. We would pick the orders. We'd let the orders come in during the day. We'd pick the orders that night. Our 12-year-old would go and cross-check the order in the morning, and then we'd post them the next morning. Mm. And, it was...
It's also
quite strange.
The thing I really love about this is, or one of the many things, there's plenty of things to love about this project and this story. It's fantastic. But one of the big things is that, in this day and age, everyone wants this automated business where they are, selling digital downloads, all online, sit at home in your underwear, kind of drinking a pina colada type of business. And, when you look at but at the same time, everyone would love the success you guys have had. And you look at it, okay, it was a very manual-based business, which is fine, and it was a very retail-based supporting that kind of industry, which, again, kind of goes against these online sales letters of how to make $1 million. And I love that it was a real business doing real things, really smart, very strategically, and I think that was very, very cool.
We were very clear very, very early on that even though we we had no idea how big it was going to grow. And what was interesting is as it grew, we continuously had to look at how did we improve our systems. And I'd love to say that it was all strategically done ahead of time, but it was, and I will write a book on this, but like I am jokingly, tongue in cheek in some interviews, I've said it was management by chaos.
Yep.
Okay. Like that basically what would happen is things would get to a point that we just couldn't possibly grow any further without something shifting. And then, so what we would do is we would sit down and we would work out what is it that is stopping us from expanding further, and we just put something in place, is like instantaneously to change it.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Yep, sorry. I was just going to say, and so that was our growth in that first 18 months was very much management by crisis, and then we strategically, as we started to move forward from that point forward, we brought a mentor online, which was just when we went absolutely ballistic.
Interesting. Well, I want to touch on that in a moment because I think, coaching and support's obviously a big important thing. But at what point, like, how do you juggle this? Because obviously you have and still have obviously the chiropractic clinic. Does Monica still have the print broking business, or does she get out of that very quickly?
We actually, what we did is, and this is something that I say to lots of people as well, is that we got to a point where once we were making our turnover or our profitability was greater than what Monica was turning over or making from her other business, we actually let that business go.
Yeah.
So we sold that business to focus on this. And then, so there was, of course, then there was a jump because her focus was solely on the sticker family versus having two hats that she was wearing. We even got to a point where I actually, and this is hilarious, if somebody had said to me 6 years ago that I'd be making 10 times more per month selling stick figure stickers than I could chiropractically, I would have laughed at them. But we got to a point where it was not a cost-effective use of my time for me to still be in practice. So I actually put a chiropractor into my practice, and I had 18 months where I was solely focused on the sticker family. The beauty of that is it bought a house. It bought my practice. I'm back in practice now 3 days a week because I love it, not because I need to be.
I found that interesting because when I sort of heard the story, because obviously you've sold, 5-6 million stickers, is that right?
8 million stickers into 23 countries. It's
insane. Absolutely insane. So obviously, there's a lot more leverage in stick figures than there are in working on people's skeletons, which is pretty cool.
Which I love doing, but at the same time, I'm doing it now because I love it, not because I have to. And if somebody had said to me, and I always hear, and I'll have somebody say about a business, they'll go, yeah, but I'm not really passionate about it. I wasn't passionate about stick figure stickers to start with either. Okay. But what was interesting is I could see that there was an opportunity there, and as that grew and as we developed it, it was interesting that it wasn't about the stick figure. Like for us, what we did is this was a way that families could represent themselves. So very quickly we branded the whole My Family brand was more about family pride. And I can remember being at one stage when we were pitching into Canada, and the stores that took us on in Canada, we opened in 380 stores in one day.
Oh, wow.
And when we went over there for a meeting, she basically asked what was the difference. And I said, well, they're not stickers. Well, we're not selling stickers. We're selling family pride.
Yeah.
And what would happen, what we would see with the families who would purchase really early on in the piece, there was that, especially from the 5 to 10-year-olds, there was that ownership of themselves representing themselves on the back of a car. And people either loved us or hated us, but at the same time, that worked in our favour.
Well, let's talk about the hate. Let's put that out on the table, because there has been a lot of online discussion about these stickers. And also, competitors as well, which we'll probably get into about other people sort of, ripping you off, but also having a go at you with their own version of the family stickers, which you could call very sexual in nature, less than tasteful. There you go. So how did you deal with all of the backlash that came about it? Tongue-in-cheek kind of backlash, I would say. It wasn't a personal attack, which is a nice kind of backlash. It was like not personally attacking you guys, but there was a lot of conversation about these stickers everywhere.
Yeah. And there's a saying that any kind of media coverage, whether it's positive or negative, is of value.
Yep.
And we would always see spikes in our sales directly after something hit the media, which was, it didn't matter whether it was a good piece or a bad piece.
Yep.
We'd always see spikes in our sales. And what was interesting was that early on in the piece, it was all of the pieces were positive. I think only in Australia, because of our culture and that nature that we have, which very few other countries kind of understand, like probably Canada's about the next closest, that whole, I don't want to say it rudely, but almost taking the mickey or kind of taking a spin on something. Yeah, taking the piss out of it. And that being the case, I mean, we would see some of the things that came into the marketplace, and we actually had thought about producing them ourselves before anything hit the marketplace. But we also branded ourselves as this whole being about family pride and being about representing your family. So to us, that would have been incongruent to then sell the anti-family sticker or to sell. And we even had conversations with the people who put those stickers into the marketplace. And in one case, he said, "You've created a whole market for me." And we weren't antagonistic towards them, because at the end of the day, it's not something that you could trademark as such. You can't trademark a sticker on a car. Okay, you can't even trademark a stick figure. But what we were very protective of was our My Family branding. We actually ended up with a trademark on the wording. And we were very, very protective of all of our design work. So anytime somebody moved into something that had crossed a particular line, we sought legal action. Yep. And so very early on in the piece, we were known to be willing to protect our brand. But the biggest thing that we were taught early on is that with lots of brands, you end up with this thing called genericide, where it becomes so generic that, and that actually worked in our favor in some ways, but people didn't know the difference. They'd see stickers on the back of the car and they go, "Oh yeah, I've seen them." Okay. And in some cases they weren't our stickers, but by then we had pretty much cornered the retail market. And because of the systems that we had in place for distribution, it was pretty much by the time the other people had moved into the marketplace, we had 90% of the market share. Yeah. And so we had 3 or 4 competitors competing for the other 10%.
And they were mostly online competitors? I'm guessing by the sounds of that, they didn't really get much penetration in retail?
It was very difficult for them to get penetration in retail. One of them was quite strategic, which I admired, in that what he would do is because we were also, in some ways we were naive, but we also were very supportive of our retailers. We would list, you could type into our website your postcode and it would tell you where your closest stores were that sold us. So we actually had somebody who went to our website and printed, and basically they would actually, knowing that our strategy was to only put one retailer in the area, they would then approach a different retailer. So, I mean, I take my hat off to their ingenuity, but at the same time, we created this from day dot. And all I would say to anyone is that if they're looking at businesses that are they have an opportunity, is make sure that you have your own spin on it, so that you're not just a replica. That's me, of course, coming from my perspective, of course. Yeah.
So did you find that these extra competitors cause any sort of price issues or sort of price competition?
No. And well, a number of them were selling cheaper, yes.
Yeah, because they're a sticker. Like they're not overly expensive to create.
No, they weren't. what was really interesting, and we looked at this from the whole point of view of margins that everyone needed and all of that. Our end price was determined by a lot of our discussions with retailers as to what they needed from a gross profit point of view. So the interesting thing was, and the reason that we were able to capitalize on that and that market is because our gross profit for the end retailer was significantly higher. And because we already had the branding and because of Monica's background in graphic design, we didn't really have all of the costs that some of the other people would have. Like we had our own graphic designer. We had contacts within the printing industry that made it very cost effective. So our ability and our margins were great, but we were able to also offer greater margins to the retailers. So even if they had stickers that could sell cheaper, they weren't selling the volume of them to make the profit margins work for them.
Yeah. That's very, very savvy of you guys. So you mentioned help before, and obviously you mentioned a mentor. What was that sort of experience like going out? When did you decide to get a mentor? What skills did they bring? How did you find them?
Well, we had a person who at one stage, as our volumes got very significant, we had to look at how did we change what we were doing from a manufacturing point of view to make sure that we were accepted on a retail level. To start with, we weren't even a packaged product. So when we started to secure a deal with Automotive Brands, which was we rolled out into 250 stores in April, I think it was 2010 or 2009. We actually had to look at going to packaging and barcoding. Yep. So to do that cost effectively, we had to outsource and we went offshore. And because we couldn't compete, we were actually able to have the sticker packaged, barcoded, and on a colored backing paper from outsourcing offshore than we could anywhere in Australia. Yeah. And so from our point of view, even though we were reluctant to do it with the volume that we were starting to move, and what ended up happening is the person that we once again, we asked questions. We started talking to people who had looked at offshore things and were producing offshore, and who did they recommend? And we ended up with a gentleman who became a significant part of our business for the last 5 years. And in fact, he still looks after all of our international sales. And he became our broker for production in China. But he'd had such a vast business background that a lot of our conversations were more about strategically moving forward. So we eventually approached him about becoming a business coach for us, because he was unattached he was removed enough that he could look at what was happening on a business level without being directly involved. And the beauty of that is he could make a recommendation, we would implement the recommendation, and we'd see massive changes in our workload and the stress on us and in our ability to meet deadlines and volume. So I've always had a mentor. I've had a mentor in my chiropractic practice. I've had other mentors in the past from a financial investment point of view. So it was a natural progression to go, we need somebody who can look at this from an unattached position, who has our best interests at heart, and help us move forward.
Very cool. So how was the experience going overseas and kind of expanding into how many countries is it now? Did you mention?
23. Well, we're in 23. We've got 3 other countries that are still in the process of actually opening, which is hilarious, because it's a product with a life cycle. And you said at the beginning of the interview that the phenomenon that was the sticker family or is still the sticker family, in some countries we're only just starting to really hit our major sales peaks. Whereas in Australia and New Zealand, we're towards the end of our marketplace. Yeah. So, what was interesting is I had to free up for a significant part of the first 18 months to 2 years. My role was a sales agent role. So I was finding the retailers, I was negotiating the deals. As soon as we decided to put somebody on to look after that for Australia, So we found a sales agent, a national sales agent, and we interviewed a number of people, and we came up with a person who was a perfect fit. I was then freed up to start. At that stage, we had 3 countries internationally. I was then freed up to look after the international sales. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of having this mentor, and his name's David Phillips. He's actually based in Melbourne. Amazing man. The beauty of having him come on board is he had done mass distribution in multiple countries in the past. So when we actually, and we talked about Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, before, there's a need for 3 or 4 different personality profiles in order to create, according to Gladwell, in order to create a tipping point. And we had somebody who was fantastic at opening doors. We had a personality profile, which was David, who was great at the numbers and had absolute certainty and was very systematic about making sure that it happened. My role was that I had that whole personality profile that I am great at closing a sale and had that belief in the product, and Monica had the skill set of producing it. So we had almost this perfect storm, and the person who was our international sales agent was opening doors. He'd open the door, and then I would follow the negotiations through, and then we would go and visit them in whatever country they were, and we'd seal a deal. And that's what happened with Canadian Tire, where we opened in 380 stores. We moved 1.8 million stickers into Canada in 6 months.
It's insane.
Yeah, so we were really we were very fortunate. Like, New Zealand was our first overseas market, Japan was our second, South Africa was our third, and then it just it created a snowball effect.
Incredible. So you mentioned there, like, you're obviously aware that it's a project. It's going to have a finite end date. The stickers probably will always be around, but they're not going to have the same sort of impact as they've had, particularly, obviously, as you said, here in Australia. It's already starting to sort of peter off a little bit. What are you doing about product line extensions? Are you thinking about sort of keeping the brand going, or are you sort of thinking like, let's just tie this up in a nice little bow?
Well, we've done a number of things. Even up to 18 months ago, we were looking for what would be the next product that we would move to our retailers. We had 800 retailers across Australia, and we would have retailers constantly asking us, even 6 to 9 months into our sales, what else have you got for us?
If you're the highest grossing product in a store, they're clearly going to want to sell more of your stuff.
Yes, and this was a learning curve for us, because of course we're going, okay, what have we got for you? And because we've never had that background, so we didn't know that. But we then got we started to get very strategic about, okay, what else would we bring to market? Because anything else that we wanted to bring to market, we wanted to make sure was going to be successful as well. And we moved into magnets. The sales didn't back up that. We've definitely done quite a lot of royalty work where we've got books that have been produced by people for like stick books, and cool. And we've had endorsements from companies like Toyota, and that was a great partnership for both of us with the Kluger. And so we've looked at licensing deals. What we've also done is we were very aware of what it was, and we broke down what it was that made this the fad that it was and created the sales. And so when we started, and we have developed a second product which hasn't hit the market yet, and that will be really exciting when that does. But we were looking for ways to recreate that. But what we decided this time around is we wanted something that was a consumable, if possible. Because what would happen is we'd spend quite a bit of time and energy creating a raving fan from a customer point of view. But in reality, we could only sell to them probably twice. Yep. They might have 2 cars, they might buy a gift set for somebody else, but we didn't have that ongoing repeat sales. So what we were endeavoring to do was to look at how do we create that same customer enthusiasm or that raving fan, but have a consumable or a collectible that we would get ongoing sales from. Yeah. So we have a new project that Monica and I are working on, which is very consumable based, and that's all coming to market at the moment, and we're super excited about that. But it's not under the Sticker Family branding. We're basically still in the process of producing our next product, and that's definitely orientated at that kid market again, and it is a collectible. So that will happen down the line, and we'll let you know more about that when that actually hits the marketplace. But yeah, we've also kind of branched out into a completely different area again, where we're now looking at what did we learn from our first venture, and how can we take that into a new business that has all of the positives that the Sticker Family had and as few of the negatives as possible.
Yeah, intriguing. I'm interested to hear what's going to happen in the next couple of months.
Yeah, well, we're really in a point at the moment where it's like a new tipping point for us, and of course, one of the things that our new business mentor has put out to us is that one of the things I never really took full advantage of was the social media side of things.
Yeah.
So I'm in the process of creating a number of short videos that are more inspiration based, but at the same time, will hopefully it's a whole direction. We're still evolving, and we're still moving forward, but we constantly get people kind of getting in touch with us and wanting to either utilize us as a business mentor or to look at how could we help them with a product that they want to take to market. I pretty much say to anyone who gets in touch that I'm happy to have a chat and I'm happy to help in any way that I can, because I look at it and go, the relationships that you create, you never know whether or not something won't come of that later that could be mutually beneficial for everyone involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me ask you one final question, Phil. This is the same question we ask everyone who comes on the show. What's the one question I haven't asked you that I probably should have?
It's a good question. I think for me, the question that I wish lots of people would ask is about what do they think the key ingredient was that made this work in comparison to so many other startups that have, or people who have a great idea, but the idea never goes further than being an idea. And if that had been the question, the answer would have been that Monica and I were willing to take massive action.
Yeah.
We were very aware of the risks associated, and we minimized our risks. I think if you're in a situation where there is minimal risk from a financial point of view, and really all you're going to be doing is investing a certain amount of capital outlay that you're comfortable with, but your main investment is time, and you're willing to take massive action, and you're passionate about it, you can create like amazing change. And I use it sounds woofy, but I call it manifestation. Mm-hmm. Okay. But that whole manifestation formula is that if you have an idea, you back it with emotion, you write it down in time and space, you act on it with massive action and energy and matter, you can manifest. Mm. And I think what most people do is they miss one of those components.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that would be the question, and that would have been the answer.
Awesome, Phil. Well, mate, congratulations. It's pretty obvious that you've done an amazing job with the project, and appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated being on the call. Very grateful for the opportunity.
So I'm going to say it again, mate. Awesome conversation. You really got him with that last question again, and he had such a great response to that last question about just what it actually takes to do this stuff, and it fits in so well with what we talked about in the last show about having a massive action plan, taking massive action, minimizing those risks, and just having passion. I mean, he said it at the start, really. He said that anything he was willing to work at was going to be successful. Yeah. And I just love those stories that were in there.
he did an amazing job with his business. Obviously, his partner as well. But to sell stickers that are so easily replicatable, aren't overly patentable, I guess you call it, or trademarkable, if that's even a word.
Yeah.
And they just built a phenomenal business to scale. And I just love how they went to market. I thought that was really amazing because I didn't know the story myself. This is the really cool thing about that conversation, is that I kind of saw the end result by driving, in the car and seeing the stickers everywhere. But I had no idea about his actual path to market. And I was very impressed with the way he went about that. Very strategically, I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that I took from that was where they realized that their target audience literally were 5 to 10-year-old kids. And they took what they thought they were going to do. They thought they were going to go and put these things. They always knew they were going to go retail, which again, a bit weird for a lot of people who just commit themselves to online and ignore retail. As you said in the conversation, a lot of value in retail still. They knew they were going to do it, but they managed to almost avert disaster, because the default would be it's a car sticker, go in the automotive stores. Yeah. And they realized, because of the market audience, these 5 to 10-year-olds and their mums or parents, and this idea of the family pride thing, that wasn't going to do it. So they switched and went with the newsagent route. And that was just amazing bit of market awareness and really understanding their market, which again, I said before at the beginning of the show, that was the most important thing about this, is that these lessons are applicable to anybody. Everything he did, whether it's retail or online, it all just fits any business. You can take so much from that call. So again, you've done it to me again. You brought me a random guy, and you just found so much value in there, mate. Now, one thing that was interesting in there is he talks about one of our people that we talk about a lot. He talked about Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point. Book I've read, book you've read.
Absolutely.
So I think that's
So I was going to say, for people who haven't read the book, definitely check it out. But if, again, you're like us, Audible is the solution we use for the majority of our books. And if you head over to audibletrial.com/Preneurcast, audibletrial.com/Preneurcast, you'll be able to actually go and get a free audiobook from their collection of over 100,000 titles. And obviously, Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point is one of those books. And if you need to start somewhere this week and really enjoyed the conversation with Phil, head over to audibletrial.com/Preneurcast, a great supporter of our show, and get a copy of The Tipping Point for absolutely no cost.
Yeah, and thank you to Audible for providing that free offer to Preneurcast listeners. Now, the other thing that Phil talked about in there, right at the end of the wrapping it up, but that he talked about all the way through in concept, was this idea of a massive action plan and taking action on that massive action plan. Now, again, fits right in with what we've been talking about recently. And folks, that if you're without a plan, if you're without a focus or a framework, the one that we recommend is the 7 Levers of Business. And you can get a really good overview of those 7 levers and how they can double your profit with simple 10% increases. If you go to 7leversreport.com, that's number 7, leversreport.com. Link will be in the show notes. Download the report for free, check it out, and get started on your massive action plan.
Absolutely. And next episode, we are back with more awesomeness. We've got, as I said recently, we've got Michael Gerber, Robert Allen, Perry Marshall. We've got some amazing guests coming up over the next few episodes, so make sure you stick around, subscribe in iTunes, leave a review, and check out these other awesome conversations and interviews coming up.
And you can always get all back episodes on preneurmarketing.com. Again, link in the show notes. Do drop over there. You can leave us a comment and feedback there as well. We look forward to hearing from you. Get some feedback on this interview, all the conversations that we have, all the show episodes, and what you want to hear from us, because after all, this show is for you guys. Thanks for joining us this week, as always, and we will see you all soon.
Ciao.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of Preneurcast with Pete Williams and Dom Gosher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at www.preneurmarketing.com or drop them a line via Preneurcast@preneurgroup.com.